this life, we have the choice to say yes, no, believe, or not to believe. Sometimes believing can lead us to the truth. Other times it can lead us deeper down the hole. But one day, we will find the truth.
Keep on searching for something that we really cannot find.
If you're focusing really hard on the planchette and waiting for it to move, you might not notice that your finger happened to twitch a little toward one of the letters.
What the?
They always appear unannounced, wearing plain black suits and ties, and threaten anyone with any intel about aliens on Earth.
That mind is in me. You'll have to decide that for yourself.
Hi everybody, welcome back to a new video. Okay, so first of all, I just want to thank you guys so much for all of the love and support on the last video. That was like kind of shocking. I didn't know if y'all would be down for that, but you showed up. And I'm glad that you did. I love conspiracy theories. I love like the Bermuda Triangle, Flight 19, all of the ones I'm gonna speak today, aliens, ghosts. I have like a whole file cabinet full of conspiracies that I could dump on you if you would want me to do that. We are gonna be talking about 3 conspiracies, and the first one being Ouija boards. Not really a conspiracy, but just more of a crazy phenomenon that is it phenomena or phenomenon? Phenomena, you know. Ouija boards have like a very weird reputation. Some people say it's fake, some people say it's real. And for example, why a lot of people say it's fake is because there's this thing called automatism. There's a part of your unconscious brain that basically keeps you from doing the worst of the worst, basically. Like, for example, if you weirdly wanted to punch yourself in the face right now, you could definitely do that. But the reason you don't is because there's a part in your subconscious brain that allows you not to do that, or tells you, hey, that's gonna hurt, don't do that. And it's said that the Ouija board actually unlocks that part of your subconscious and makes you do things that you don't normally do.
By your thoughts and subconscious. So if you're focusing really hard on the planchette and waiting for it to move, you might not notice that your finger happened to twitch a little toward one of the letters, and your brain won't notice either. So faced with a spooky moving planchette, it makes sense that you would just assign causation anywhere you can.
Say, for example, you're trying to contact your grandmother and you ask your grandmother a question. Oh, what is my favorite food? And in your mind, you're thinking pasta. Your fingers are going to spell out the word pasta because that is what your subconscious wants to happen. And so you kind of manifest the outcome in a way. That's why a lot of scientists don't really believe in the Ouija board or don't really think it's real. But a lot of unexplained situations have went down in regards to the Ouija board that makes people think otherwise. A little bit of backstory on the Ouija board, or if you just don't know what a Ouija board is, the Ouija board is basically a small rectangular cardboard or wood that has the letters A through Z, numbers 0 through 9, as well as the words yes, no, and goodbye. Also have this thing called a planchette. Every member who is playing the game puts 2 fingers on, and that planchette has also like a magnifying glass on top, and you are supposed to use this board in order to connect to other realms, such as like, I don't know, other realms. I don't know how many there are, like heaven, hell, is that it? Girl, that is a whole nother video. The Ouija board actually came about during the 1850s spiritualism movement. This was during a time where everybody was kind of questioning God and questioning if there was any other higher power besides God. And the Ouija board was actually one of the tools that came out of the spiritualism movement. Actually, in English translates to yes, yes board. It was originated in France and Germany, and in France French, oui means yes. In German, G means yes. It was very, very popular in France, and France would not just have these small little boards. It was like huge productions. They would paint these like letters and symbols on the sidewalks, and like they would have these big like magnifying tables, and people would pay to watch. Like, it was a huge thing until one day an American by the name of Elijah came to France. Elijah saw how amazing this was for business and how much money he was getting. So Elijah decided to do what Americans do best and take what's not theirs. So he went back to the States and he told his two friends, hey, I got this great idea. And they're like, that is a great idea. How'd you come up with that? And he's like, I don't know, it just came to me. Three men by the name of Elijah, Charles, and a coffin maker named Reich decided to create more portable sizes of the Ouija board and not doing big productions so they could earn more profit that way. Why they even had the coffin maker in the mingle in the first place was because funerals are one of the most poppin' places for death. You go to a funeral home and you're all upset and you're looking at all these coffins, and then you see a Ouija board and you're like, hey, what's that? They're just like, oh, that's just a board that you can use to like connect to, what was it, like your dead mother? Yeah, you could like talk to her or something, you know. If you have any like unfinished business or you want closure on anything, like you could just use it, but it's whatever. And then obviously people are like, yeah, give me 5 of them. And also a great deal too about this like portable version is that people didn't have to deal with scammers. There were like fortune tellers, but there were also scammy fortune tellers. So sometimes people would take advantage of the poor and like try to scam them of all their money. By having these portable Ouija boards that they could just use whenever they wanted, it was a lot easier for them and they didn't have to worry about like getting scammed or anything. Also, they get to make their own appointments because it's there, so you could use it whenever you want, which we'll see later is not always a good thing. Oh wait, or actually we'll see that right now. 1912, a girl named Ella Crawford. This was our very first sight into what the Ouija board can do. I didn't even mention this. At this point, since it was during the spiritualism movement that this whole Ouija board came out to be, people thought that when they were talking to the board, they were talking to God. They didn't know that they were talking to anything evil until 1912, a woman named Ella Crawford, who was a widow and a mother, got a Ouija board and used the Ouija board for everything. Every decision she made, every question she had, she went to the Ouija board to seek answers. Until one day, she was playing the Ouija board and the Ouija board basically told her that her and her 9-year-old daughter was going to go into deep poverty soon, and in order to prevent all of the hardships that they're about to go through, they should just die. The mother went into the bathtub where her 9-year-old daughter was staying, drowned her, put her in funeral clothes, and this is like, it's terrible, but like, get this. This woman took an axe to her head trying to like, you know, herself. And she survived. Literally took an axe to her head and she survived. And another thing is that since this was during 1912, if you got off for reasons of insanity, you weren't sent to like a psychiatric ward as you are now. You are basically just free to go, except now you're put on medication. When the police asked her like, why did you do it? She said, the board told me to do so. They saw that as a reason of insanity and just let her go with some meds. Now, during the 1920s and 30s, the Ouija board started to get extremely popular because this was during the war. So a lot of people, you know, were losing a lot of family members due to the war and wanted to contact them. As it started to grow a lot more in popularity, the 3 guys were like, hey, maybe we should patent this thing so nobody can recreate it and it's just all of our profit. And it's so crazy because like back in the day, you know, like now you could just patent a product like, hey, I got this clothing line and now it's my clothing line because I own the brand. But back in the day, you literally had to go up the officials and show them your product in person, then they decide whether or not. So they did a little Ouija board session for the officials. They said, yep, it works, and they were able to patent it, but not with the name Ouija board, but instead Kinyard Novelty Company. 2 years later, Reich, the coffin maker, you know, the man, the myth, he left. And after that, it was just the two guys until after a while, one of the other guys left. And then after that, the only guy standing ended up dying because he fell from a 3-story building. Before the last guy actually died, he's the one who created the name Ouija board. No one really knows where the name came from. A lot of people just think that it's oui because it's yes in French, and then G because it's yes in German, but it's just not like set in stone of where that name came from. After he died, the Ouija board brand went to a bunch of people. Ouija went to the Parker Brothers in 1966, then General Mills in 1968, Kinner in 1985, Tonka in 1987, and then Hasbro in 1991, where it is at now today. A lot of people were wondering, oh my god, that's so crazy how you could get Ouija boards at Toys R Us. It's because the brand Hasbro is a toy company, and when they were presented this Ouija board, it looks like a board game at first glance. If you don't believe in ghosts or anything, you're not going to believe it's a real thing or it's a real product until people started finding out how scary it actually was. But Hasbro already bought the brand. What are we gonna do? Like, we have thousands and thousands of these boards, and the only distributing companies we have are toy companies like Toys R Us, and then they just ended up releasing it into toy companies anyways. Now that you know a little bit of the history and also why people don't think it works, let's get into a few spooky stories about the Ouija board that kind of makes me think that there is a lot more than just the Ouija board. On top of that story that I told you earlier about Ella Crawford drowning her daughter and trying to end herself because of the Ouija board telling her to do so, there are so many other cases that are similar. In 2001, 53-year-old Carol from Oklahoma actually was obsessed with the Ouija board, similar to Ella. She would go to the Ouija board for everything. She was a mother. Every decision that she made, she would consult the Ouija board, until one day she was playing the Ouija board and it said to her that her brother-in-law and 10-year-old granddaughter are evil and plan on killing her, and the only way to stop them from killing her is if she kills them first. So immediately when she heard that, she took a knife, went into the brother-in-law's bedroom and stabbed him. He died. And then on her way to kill the granddaughter, thankfully, her real daughter got in the middle of it and stopped the mother from killing the 10-year-old granddaughter. Instead of calling the police, you know what this girl did? You know what these ladies did? They just drove off. They fled the scene. Like, oh. Maybe they won't notice. Maybe they won't notice that there's like a guy dying in the back of that. What? That part was so crazy to me, because it's like your mother literally just murdered someone. Why? And the craziest part, I feel like I say that for every part, but they let her drive. They let her drive, which was not a good choice, because she drove off the road and into a pole. And karma is a real one, because she is the only one that got hurt in that car crash. Her daughter and the 10-year-old granddaughter were completely fine, but Carol, she broke both of her ankles. Even on her broken ankles, she was trying to shove her 10-year-old granddaughter into oncoming traffic. She was still committed to this plan. And so eventually, after trying, she realized that she wasn't gonna do it, and so Carol ran off into the woods. And then finally, they call the police. The police go out into the woods, and then a few hours later, they find Carol in the middle of the woods, completely nude. But I'm not gonna, this is the craziest part, okay? Is that Carol had no history of mental illness. She had no history of substance abuse of any kind. She didn't have any history of anything like wrong with her health. She didn't have like any physical health issues. She was a completely healthy 53-year-old, and all of a sudden she just commits murder because the board told her to do so. And that was her reasoning too, is that the board told her. She obviously was pleaded guilty. I don't really know how long she got in prison for. Similar story also happens from a woman named Mary in Maryland. How cute. How cute. Well, not so cute because she shoots her husband.
Just want to make it clear that I was not laughing at the fact she shot her husband. I was laughing at the fact that I thought her name was cute, when in fact she is not cute. She is a murderer. So that's why I was giggling. I didn't want you guys to think I was being insensitive. Okay, bye.
Similar to Carol and Ella, Mary was very, very dedicated to this board. Every problem that she had, every question that she had, she went to the board until one day it told her that her husband was cheating on her. And so the board told her that instead of confronting him, she should kill him. And so then she did. She shot her husband dead, and of course she was, guilty. But same thing with Carol. There was no sign of substance abuse, like she had no substances in her body. She had no signs or past records of mental health issues. She was completely healthy, and then all of a sudden this board comes into her life, and then she, And that's why I do think that there is something to the board, because it's no coincidence that you're completely fine and healthy, and then all of a sudden this board walks into your life, and then you're not good anymore, and then like now you just kill someone. But again, like I said earlier, it is kind of just over subconscious, but I don't really think it's all about subconscious. Like, I do think that there's something evil and twisted about the board. Oh my god, should I play? Yeah, I'm gonna play the Ouija board and kill the game. So that's basically my theories about the Ouija board, is that I do really think that there's something more to it. I don't think it's just a fun game used for 8+. Like, I think there's a lot more evil and sinister within it. And even if there is no evil or sinister thing that you're talking to, it does bring something sinister out of people. And that is evil, The second thing that we're going to be talking about today is something very, very crazy. It's something that still keeps me up all the time. Malaysian Airlines Flight MH370. Before we get into that whole shebang, I want to thank the partner of today's video, Etta Love, because they are not only sponsoring this video, but they are hosting a giveaway for all of my beautiful best friends out there. Etta Love is an amazing real sterling silver jewelry brand that handcrafts all of their jewelry from Bali. They have such a wide selection of different styles and amazing jewelry pieces that can go with any single outfit. I actually gave one of the bracelets to my best friend for her birthday, and this is what she thinks.
I hate Haley, but look at this bracelet.
Oh my god, see, she loves the bracelet. Now, the beautiful bracelet that you see right now is something that I gave to my sister for Mother's Day. She's wearing the beautiful No Rose Without a Thorn bracelet in the size 7.5 for reference. I myself got these beautiful earrings. These are the Fallen Angel earrings. I literally never take these off. I was so excited to make this video just so I can start wearing these in videos. Now, the amazing people at Etta Love are actually organizing a $500 gift card giveaway for all of you guys, plus a free $25 gift card to anybody who signs up for their newsletter. All you have to do is sign yourself up to their newsletter, as well as commenting something down below, and by doing so you'll be entered in the $500 giveaway for Etta Love's website. Within 1 week of the upload date of this video, they will be contacting the winner via email. I just want to thank Etta Love so much for not only sponsoring this video, but also organizing this super cool giveaway, because it's always nice to give back to you guys, because you mean so much to me, blah 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 blah, all the sappy stuff. So make sure to click on the link down below to be added to their mailing list. And yeah, let's get on with Malaysian Airlines MH370. Now, if you've never heard of Malaysian Airlines 370, I'm going to give you a little bit of backstory on what it is before we get into conspiracies of what people believed happened. On March 8th of 2014, a plane model by the name of Boeing 777 was flying from Kuala Lumpur to the Beijing Capital Airport. The plane had about 239 people on it. 12 of them were crew members and 227 of them were passengers. The two main people who were operating the plane was the Captain Shaw and the co-pilot Farik. Now, Shaw was a very experienced pilot. He had around 18,000 hours of flight time under his belt. He was practically a veteran. He was very passionate about flying. He even had a flight simulator at his house, so even when he was at home, he could still be flying and practice. As for Farik, on the other hand, he was not so experienced. He had never even flown a Boeing 777 before, and he only had around 2,700 hours of flight time underneath his belt. And also, about a year prior to all of this, he actually gotten in trouble at his job for bringing girls into the cockpit to smoke. Which, Farik, my boy, maybe not the time. This is a flight, not a frat party. Maybe not the time. The departure time for the flight was 12:40 and they were supposed to go to Beijing by 6:40, making it a 5-hour flight. Now, typically for 5-hour flights, a Boeing 777 needs about 80,000 gallons of jet fuel, but the plane that they were operating had about 108,000 gallons of jet fuel, meaning that they had an extra 2 hours. So say, like, you know, they're running out of jet fuel and they need to stop in an airport to get more, they have an extra 2 hours of jet fuel to last them and do so. Now, everything in the beginning went extremely smooth. Everybody, you know, entered the plane. Everybody was completely safe and sound. The plane took off just fine, but it wasn't until around 1:20 a.m. where the last sign of life from this plane could be heard, and it was a transmission from Captain Shaw basically saying, "Good night, MH370. And that was the last time anyone has ever heard anyone from this plane. What happened just a few minutes after that transmission was spoken out, the plane completely vanished. It disappeared. The whole situation is very sad, but it's also very frustrating because it seemed like in the moment, no one was really doing anything to help. As I said earlier, that was the last transmission ever heard, and then from there, it completely just went off the radar. And what I mean by that is that you could clearly tell, and they did tell after the fact, that the plane was going the complete opposite direction of its usual route. Seemed like everything was going smooth, and then all of a sudden, in midst of their trip, they just took a very abrupt U-turn and just went straight into the southern Indian Ocean for hours and hours. And throughout those hours and hours, none of the air traffic teams noticed that this plane was not going in the direction that it should be going. Until 6:40 in Beijing rolls around, and 6:40 was the time that the plane was supposed to get back, but the plane never returned. Since the plane never returned, you would think that you would probably check on the plane to make sure everything's okay, but no one did. It wasn't even until 8 a.m. where the plane had sent out a distress signal. That's when people finally realized that this plane was gone. It was disappeared and it was just off the radar. After this whole thing, people were obviously very scared. As I said, there were over 200 passengers on this plane. The oldest person on this plane was 76 years old, but the youngest person on this plane was only a year and a half. People started, deservingly so, freaking out because what happened to their parents, their siblings, their children. Now, remember how I said earlier that this plane had around 108,000 gallons of jet fuel that can add an extra 2 hours to their flight time? Well, when they went past their 5-hour limit, 2 hours extra, 2.5 hours extra, that's 7.5 hours, meaning that distress signal was probably due to low fuel, meaning that at 8 a.m. that plane was still in the air, and again, no one noticed. Hours after they realized that it was missing, they sent out search units, and search units found nothing. No debris, no plane parts, no, clothing floating on top of water, no people, nothing. Now, even though in the moment it really wasn't the best, it seemed like nobody cared, after the fact though, they really stepped up and this became one of the biggest searches in aviation history. They sent out 19 vessels and 345 military aircraft in looking for this plane. They then searched 45 million kilometers radius of the ocean, as well as 1,800 kilometers of seafloor, going to nearby lands just to see if any debris had washed up on the shore. But again, there was just nothing to be found, which is very crazy when you think about it, because when you think about our oceans, you think like, okay, we've only discovered 5% of our oceans. That means when these people were searching for this plane, and this plane wasn't like some little small Christmas ornament sort of plane. This was a 242 foot long plane. So like, if they were to just be, doing their boats in the water and then they look down and see this huge plane, they then, found the plane, but they found absolutely nothing. After endlessly trying to find this plane, no one could figure out where it had gone to. And not only was this the biggest search in aviation history, it was also the most expensive. So on January 15th of 2015, they had declared the plane as missing, as well as it being an accident. And then about 2 years later, on January 17th of 2017, they had called off the search.
Come to us a stage where we cannot keep on searching for something that we really cannot find.
I don't really blame them. They tried for so long to find this plane or find any debris or anything, but nothing was found. And the craziest part, in every plane there's this thing called a black box, and basically what a black box is, it's a indestructible box in the plane that records everything. It records all the conversations in the cockpit, all of the levels and fluids inside the plane. It just records everything. And not only does it record everything, it's also indestructible, and this black box sends out a ping on the nearest radar for 30 days until it runs out of battery. And this black box was nowhere to be found. They had already searched the seafloor, so it wasn't on the seafloor, and also it wasn't on land because they looked towards all of the land that was surrounding and nothing. They saw the flight's route, so they knew it was somewhere in this area, and it's not underwater because the black box wasn't going off. So where did this plane go? Like, did it go to sky high? Like, where did this thing go? And then in January of 2018, a private company actually went out there and explored 112,000 kilometers of water, again trying to find this plane, but nothing. It literally is nowhere to be found. So what happened to this plane? This is where the conspiracies start going in. The first conspiracy, it was believed that Captain Shaw was actually behind the whole thing and was the person in charge of destroying and crashing the plane. Why people believe this is because, like I said earlier, Captain Shaw had a private flight simulator in his home, and when the police were doing investigations on this, they actually realized that just a few weeks prior, Shaw had actually conducted a very, very similar flight to his flight simulator, and even towards the end of his flight, he flew straight into the southern Indian Ocean, and he deleted the flight simulation. The next day, he performs the same exact flight and still going straight into the southern Indian Oceans. And allegedly, 2 days before, he had conducted another flight simulation, but this time, instead of going into the southern Indian Oceans, he went straight into the Lumpur Towers. This man conducted an actual attack. Can you do that? I don't think you can. Is that even legal? Not like in real life, but even simulating it? Didn't they have like a school shooter simulation or something? People are messed up. When they asked the family about it, like, hey, did he act weird prior to like all of this? And the family actually came out and said that Shaw was acting super weird in the days leading up to the flight, as well as him spending more time than usual on his flight simulator. He conducted these flights and the police thought that it was very, very sketchy. And not only did the police think it was sketchy, so did aviation experts. A few aviation experts came out about this conspiracy and said the placement of where the plane was crashed, it is only something that you can do if you've been flying for a very long time. It was in a place where if it did crash, it wouldn't hit any surrounding land. It was so deep into the ocean that it would take forever to find. And also, when they were looking at the original route, Captain Shaw had actually hovered over his hometown, Penang, for a while before continuing the route in the southern Indian Ocean. Maybe he was trying to reminisce and look at his hometown one last time before going into the Indian Ocean. A lot of people, you know, when they heard this, just thought that it was Shaw's fault. So they started blaming him for it, which is not right. And even the family came out and said that it's not right for people to just blatantly assume and point fingers. It's not their fault. No one knows what happened. No one knows whose fault it is. And it's just very disrespectful to the family to assume and yell at and like say, you know, you did this when no one really knows what happened. The second conspiracy, and probably the most widely believed one, is that there was an oxygen deficiency in the plane. Now, the Malaysian and Australian governments actually came out about this theory and said that it may or may not be true, but it is the most logical of all the theories people are coming up with. When you are that far up in the air, obviously there is no air, there is no oxygen. So you have oxygen tanks to fuel the plane during the time given. But what a lot of people believe is that there might have been an oxygen deficiency in the plane. Maybe it was hijacked by Shaw or a passenger, or there was a defect in the plane itself. Boeing 777, about a month prior, the Boeing company had come out and said that their specific 777s are experiencing some troubles, and if you fly it for long periods of time, it could actually result in catastrophic damage. And just 2 days prior to this disappearance, Boeing came out with another warning saying that the 777s, they just found a 15-inch crack in one of their 777 planes, and to just be very, very cautious when using them. Boeing did come out about this theory and basically say it has nothing to do with the MH370, which is very hard to believe. It's like, oh yeah, we were just talking about every other plane. Not this one though. We don't know what happened to that one, but this one, all of these, yeah, that. So people just like weren't really buying it, which like understandable. I don't really either. But this kind of ties into the third conspiracy, because it was believed that possibly someone hijacked the plane, of that there was a mystery passenger. So in the beginning, I said that there was 239 people on board, 227 of them being passengers, 12 of them crewmates. Well, in the report, there was only 226 passengers and 12 crewmates, meaning that there was one person left. And it was believed that that mystery person might have hijacked the plane. Now, the airlines did come out about this theory and say that it was just an error. Again, kind of makes no sense. Like, if you're making reports about big deals like this, don't you think that you would want to get the right numbers for it? Those were the three theories on that. Personally, I don't really know which theory to believe. I honestly feel like they're all kind of interesting theories, but again, at the end of the day, no one really knows what happens, and who knows if we will ever know what happened. As far as March of 2021, there has been 33 pieces of debris found, but this happened 7 years ago, so we don't really know if this is debris from the plane or if this is just regular ocean debris or land debris. Going on to my third and final conspiracy / weird phenomenon. Did you know Men in Black was based on a true story? That's the craziest thing ever, and I'm about to tell you the origin. Basically, if you don't know what the Men in Black are, it's a group of individuals that is said to show up at your door if you are getting too deep into UFOs. If they feel like you know too much, they will show up and basically threaten you or hypnotize you. Origin story of this started back in the 1940s by a guy named Albert Bender. Albert Bender was kind of a geeky boy, like he was super into sci-fi and paranormal and like haunted houses. He actually worked at a scissor warehouse and lived upstairs in the attic along with his stepfather, and he had transformed the attic into like a spooky, scary house. If you've ever seen Garrett Watts's video where he tries to make like a spooky, basically like that. This is Garrett Watts.
Sorry, Andrew. I had to take a call. Oh, yeah?
Sit well.
That does look like graveyard gates. You've been running around doing all this filming. You must be hankering for a Halloween treat.
Can we get some down here?
Yes. I don't know how that got there or how that came to life.
It was basically just a way, because this was also during the war as well, so it was a way for all of the factory workers to get away and kind of, you know, have fun in his little house of horrors. He would have like little rats that would fall down from the ceiling, or he would have spooky records playing. Along with his love for like all things paranormal and spooky, he also came from a very witchy background. He came from like a line of witches and occults. Naturally, he was very interested in all of these subjects, but it wasn't until around 1945 where the mysterious Flight 19 appeared. Now, if you don't know what Flight 19 is, it's basically a flight of people who flew over the Bermuda Triangle and completely just went missing. If I ever do another conspiracy video, I will definitely talk about that, because that is insane. These people were literally just flying over the Bermuda Triangle and then it just went missing. And that's where the Bermuda Triangle comes from today. Like, that's where a lot of people think that it's weird or it's like speculated to be just bad luck. But this isn't about the Bermuda Triangle. This is about Men in Black. This kind of what sparked his interest into unexplainable things. And so 1946, he started to dabble his toes into the waters of UFOs and unexplained flying objects. 1950, his studies got more intense and he actually got a group of people to help him in his studies. In 1952, he created this thing called Space Review, where he would talk to people who have seen UFOs, have talked to aliens, and he would basically just talk about all of his findings and educate the public on UFOs, aliens. It was also 1952 where the harassment started. So because of him being so public with his knowledge of aliens, it kind of opened up the floor for a lot of judgment. People just didn't really believe him. They thought that he was crazy, but there were a group of people that really did believe him, and those were the people that actually saw the aliens for themselves. The harassment got so bad and that he started getting followed from home, but he didn't realize how much of an impact these people following him home would be, because these people were very tall, about 6'5" men wearing black suits, black shirts, black pants, very scrawny, like the clothes were just laying on their body, very pale, basically a TikToker. I'm just kidding. Had no hair, no eyelashes, no eyebrows, sunken face. an alien, basically. He was being followed by these people on a daily basis until one day he walked into his home and he walked into his room, and all of a sudden he got this really strong smell of sulfur. And in the middle of the room was this bright white glowing light, and as soon as he turned on the light, it vanished, and he went to go look at all of his paperwork and research and saw that it had clearly been messed with. Ever since this occurrence, he had a very big spike in migraines, really strong whiffs of sulfur, having extreme poltergeist experiences. He started hearing things, seeing things. One day he had came home and he was visited by two men in black. They were standing in the middle of his room. They told him telepathically to stop his researches, and anything further, he will suffer great consequences that will end in a very terrible death. And with that being said, the men in black took all of his research and left. And then the day after Space Review, he made his last statement to Space Review, basically telling his audience that he is no longer going to be pursuing and things like this, and anyone else who is interested in saucer work must be very, very cautious. A lot of people kind of test the validity of these statements because it was said that he did have some mental issues, but at the same time, this was like the 50s, so mental health just wasn't really normalized back then. If you had something like anxiety, then you were deemed as crazy. Eventually, down the road, he met a woman, and then when he met this woman, he stopped all of his alien researches and work, and as soon as he stopped his researches, that is when the Men in Black left. In 1953, an author by the name of Gray Barker decided to write a book about aliens and UFOs, and Albert actually featured in the book with a never before told story. He said that one night the Men in Black had actually abducted him. He saw a bright white light and two men hovering over him, and then he closed his eyes, and then when he opened his eyes back up again, he was in a lab in Antarctica, and these people showed their true forms to Albert, and they looked similar to a flatwood monster. Bright red glowing eyes staring over him, and basically told him that if he continues his research, he will die. And the reason why they looked human before is that they actually took the souls of humans, and that is what made them the form that they were. They started spilling a bunch of other secrets to Albert that Albert could not speak about. The Men in Black told Albert that the only reason they were telling him this is because they knew that if they told him all of this and then he went back home and told all of his friends, people would think he's crazy, and he would have to live a long, terrible life of everybody deeming him as insane. Also in the early 50s, there was this thing called the Robertson Panel, where basically an organization working on UFO sightings and unexplained flying objects, and Gray Barker was actually an associate of the Robertson Panel. And then after he released this book, Gray Barker. Did I just say Robert Patter? Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if that man was something other than human. God, I'm so stupid. Okay, Gray Barker. He was visited by the MIB because they went to his house and basically told him that if he releases any other UFO sighting information, he will die, basically. After that, Gray Barker just suddenly stayed silent about his entire UFO sightings. He didn't release any more books. He dropped all associations with the Robertson Panel and just never looked back at it again. In 1976, a doctor by the name of Dr. Herbert Hopkins, who was a doctor in hypnotherapy, actually, like similar to everyone else we've talked about, was very deep into UFO sightings and conducted many researches about it. Until one day, Hopkins is at home and he receives a phone call from the New Jersey UFO Sightings Committee, which was not a real committee, but he didn't know that. He received a phone call from them asking him, "Hey Hopkins, do you mind giving us a quick little article about like your findings so far and what you know? And Hopkins is like, yeah, sure. And then immediately after he hung up the phone, there was a knock at his door. When he went to go approach the door to see who was there, he saw a Men in Black approaching his door, but from the end of the walkway, as if the person had knocked on the door before even walking up to the door. It was exactly how I was explaining earlier, just black clothes, black hat, very sunken face, very pale, but this one had very bright red lips like it was wearing lipstick. Hopkins said that when he saw this person, he felt very hypnotized. He didn't really know what to do or say. The person had said, "Let me inside," and Hopkins had let the person inside. The Men in Black had a very monotone voice and told Hopkins if he further investigates, then he will die and he must destroy all evidence immediately and everything that he knows. And without thinking about it, Hopkins then takes all of his paperwork, starts up his fireplace in his living room, and throws all of his evidence and papers into the fireplace while the Men in Black is staring at him. Once all of the evidence is gone, the Men in Black leaves. Hopkins comes to and realizes what he had just done and realized that this whole investigation is a lot worse and a lot bigger than what he thought it was in the first place. That was the very first testimony that came from someone other than someone associated with Albert that have actually seen the Men in Black. The Men in Black are said to meet people that are very deep into UFO work, and it even still happens pretty recently. I know this is gonna sound a little wacky. You're gonna be like, Haley, what? You know Dan Aykroyd from like Ghostbusters? Apparently that man saw Men in Black. Dan Aykroyd was basically working on this TV show called Out There, where it was going to be a show interviewing people who have been abducted by aliens or have seen a UFO or things like that. And it was going to be a very intense TV series, shedding light on it and educating the public. In the middle of shooting, he goes outside for a little break, and when he does, a black car pulls up in front of him, and out walks a man dressed all in black, pale face. I don't have to give you the description, you know what I'm talking about. And the man says absolutely nothing to Dan, but just stares at him. And Dan looks away, and when he looks back, the car and the Man in Black is gone. He's disappeared. And a few hours later, the producers came up to him and told him that unfortunately they were asked to stop filming and also destroy all of the episodes they had made thus far. That all happened in 2002. Now in 2006, and probably the most like recent and craziest thing that happened, and probably my favorite, is back in 2006, a man named Shane Sovar, owner of a hotel near Niagara Falls, was standing outside with his security guard when all of a sudden a large silver disc appeared right over the building, so large that it took over like the whole top of the building and just flew right over. When they saw this, they started freaking out because they thought that the saucer was going to hit the building, but it didn't, weirdly, because the hotel was so high and the saucer was so low. And so immediately afterwards, they called the police, and the police, you know, did their thing. It's military, which is like, come on now, like that's such an overused excuse. Like, how humiliating. Imagine like you see something so awesome and you're like, oh my God, I think I just made history. And then the police show up and they're like, ugh, that pesky military, they're doing military stuff over hotels again. Ugh. We'll catch them next time, boys. You know, the hot spot for all things military. Why would you just test out military products in the public? Don't you have like places to do stuff like that? After they called the police, a few days later, there was 2 Men in Black that showed up to the hotel that was actually caught on security camera footage. The two men walked into the building, and according to the receptionist, they were asking for the hotel manager and the security guard. But the receptionist gave the same description as everyone else: very pale skin, sunken features, no hair, no eyebrows, no eyelashes. The two men looked identical to one another and talked very monotone, as if they didn't have a voice box. Eventually, after that, the people left. And once this footage was released, it was very hard to tell if this was real footage or an internet hoax. I personally think that the footage is real because it's more fun that way. As far as like the Men in Black, I do think that there is like a society of people who kind of make sure that the public doesn't know anything other than public knowledge, but I don't think they're just out and about in public. Like, imagine the Men in Black just go back to their corporation and then the boss is like, you didn't look at the security cameras? And then the two Men in Black are just looking at each other like, you didn't look through. I feel like there is a lot more that we don't know about, or that we can know about, but as soon as we do know about them, we're kind of restricted from knowing more. Yeah, with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and if you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Again, I'm trying to kind of like venture out into new waters. If you guys want to learn more, or even if you have suggestions, leave that down below. Put it down below right now. Quick. I do plan on in the future like continue doing videos about different controversial people that need to be talked about, or maybe that need to be brought to attention. But as for now, I'm having fun doing this, and as long as you guys are enjoying it as well, I'll continue doing stuff like this. Again, thank you so much to Etta Love for sponsoring this video, and if you guys want to know any of my socials, that will be linked down below, as well as my P.O. box. And yeah, I love you guys so much, and thank you so much for watching this video and just watching all of my other videos and subscribing and, you know, hanging out with me. I feel like we're hanging out together. I hope you guys have a beautiful rest of your day and do something that makes you happy today.